I used to work the night shift at 7-Eleven. Used to because after what happened last October, I couldn't set foot in one again. I've been trying to write this down for months now, hoping it might help me process things. Maybe someone can learn from my mistake. I was 22, taking a gap year before college, and the overnight shift suited me. The pay was decent with the night differential, and most of the time I could study or read between customers. Our store was in a decent area, not great, but not bad either, just off the highway at the edge of town. That night started like any other. I came in at 11 p.m., relieved Mark from the evening shift, and settled in behind the counter. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the coffee maker gurgled as it brewed a fresh pot. Normal stuff. Around 2 a.m. this guy came in. There wasn't anything obviously wrong with him at first. Average height, probably mid-30s, wearing a dark blue windbreaker and jeans. But something about the way he moved set me on edge. He was too deliberate, like someone trying very hard to appear casual. He wandered the aisles for about 10 minutes. That's another thing that bothered me. Nobody browses a 7-Eleven at 2 a.m. You come in, grab what you need, and leave. But this guy kept circling, always keeping me in his peripheral vision. I should have called the cops then. That's what our training said to do if someone seemed suspicious. But I was young and stupid and didn't want to look paranoid. I told myself I was overreacting. When he finally approached the counter, he had a single can of Red Bull in his hand. As I rang it up, I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. His eyes kept darting to the security camera behind me. "That'll be $3.79, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He reached into his pocket and I felt my whole body tense. But he just pulled out his wallet. As he handed me a $5 bill, I saw what looked like dried blood under his fingernails. I was reaching for his change when a police car pulled into the parking lot, its lights off. Just a routine patrol, but the guy's whole demeanor changed instantly. His face went completely blank and his hands shot back into his pocket. This time he didn't pull out a wallet. The next few seconds are still a blur in my memory. I remember the gun looked smaller than I expected. I remember thinking absurdly that he hadn't even taken his Red Bull. Most clearly, I remember the way his voice shook when he said, "Open the register." I'd been trained for this too. Just stay calm and comply, they told us. No amount of money is worth your life. But training is one thing. Having a gun pointed at your face is another. My hands were trembling so badly that I kept hitting the wrong buttons on the register. Each mistake made him more agitated. I could see sweat beading on his forehead, and his eyes kept flicking between me and the windows. The police car was still idling outside. Through the glass, I could see the officer was looking down at something, probably his phone or computer. He had no idea what was happening just a few feet away. Finally, I got the register open. As I was pulling out the bills, the guy reached across the counter and grabbed my wrist. His grip was slick with sweat. "Faster," he hissed, "and the safe too." "I can't," I whispered back. "It's time-locked. Only the manager can—" He cut me off by pressing the gun against my chest. I could feel the cold metal through my shirt. "Don't lie to me," he said, but his voice cracked on the last word. That's when the cop finally looked up and noticed something was wrong. I saw his face change as he registered the scene through the window. He reached for his radio. The robber saw it too. He spun around, still holding my wrist, dragging me half across the counter. Everything happened very fast after that. The officer drew his weapon and shouted something I couldn't hear through the glass. The robber tried to pull me in front of him as a shield, but he slipped on some receipt paper that had fallen to the floor. His gun went off, deafening in the small space. The bullet hit one of the coffee makers, sending glass and hot coffee everywhere. I yanked my arm free and dropped behind the counter as another shot rang out, this one from the officer's gun through the store window. I curled into a ball, hands over my ears, waiting for more gunshots. Instead, I heard shouting, running footsteps, breaking glass. When I finally looked up, the robber was face down on the floor, with the officer kneeling on his back. There was blood spreading from somewhere, mixing with the spilled coffee. It turned out the guy had robbed 2 other convenience stores that night. They found drugs in his system later, which explained the shaking and erratic behavior. The blood under his fingernails came from punching through a glass door at one of the other stores. I quit the next day, couldn't face going back in there, knowing how close I'd come to dying over a register full of small bills. I still have nightmares sometimes, not about the gun or the robbery itself, but about those long minutes before, when I knew something was wrong but talked myself out of acting on it. These days I work day shifts at a library. The pay isn't as good, but I've learned to trust my instincts. Sometimes being paranoid is just being prepared. And no amount of night differential is worth ignoring that little voice that tells you something isn't right. The 7-Eleven is still there, still open 24/7. They replaced the coffee maker and the window. You'd never know anything happened. But every time I drive past it at night, I see the fluorescent lights buzzing through the windows, and I remember how quickly an ordinary night can turn into the worst night of your life.